Hello. So let's just get started. May I personally wish you and yours a very merry festive season, a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and a Happy Yuletide. And I hope over the next few weeks you will enjoy what Veronica has in store for you. But from my house to yours, from the everlasting world to you, may I wish you a fabulous time. So I've been asked to share a story with you. And this story is essentially the story of the fourth Magi. Now, we all know about the three kings. If you don't know their names, they are Balthazar, Caspar, and Cassius. They found the Star of Bethlehem hovering in the sky and knew that it held the birth of Jesus Christ, the Messiah. And as we spiritualists call him, the Nazarene, the great teacher. But there is a fourth Magi, a fourth wise man, a fourth king. And his name is Atropine of Armenia. Now, I don't know about yourself, but Armenia is a very, very long way from Israel. Atropine saw the Star of David, the Star of Bethlehem, shining in the sky and knew that it meant a Messiah had been born. And so he decided to make the journey. And as he began to plan his journey, he realized he, like the other wise men, would need to take a gift. So where they chose gold, frankincense, and myrrh to represent spiritual wealth, earthly wealth, and the eventual death of the Christ Jesus, Atropine decided he would take 3 special crystals. Now, I don't mean crystals like sodalite and calcite and selenite. He chose to take with him emeralds, rubies, and sapphires. And so, setting out on the road on that very first day, Atropine found a beggar who was sick, he'd been hurt, he had no money, no help, no friends. And Atropine, unable to walk past the man, decided he would help him. And even though he knew he did not have long to get to Israel, to get to Bethlehem, he knew that he could not simply leave this sick man on the roadside. And so he took his emerald to a doctor and gave him the crystal and said, "Can I use this to buy medicine?" And the man gave him medicine, the man gave him food, and he gave him a room. And Atropine sat with this poor sick man for days and days, helping to make him better. In the end, though, Atropine realized that he had very little time to waste. And so he set out on the road again and left this poor beggar with a doctor there to get better. He set out, as the other wise men did, crossing the deserts, passing through Armenia, through what nowadays is Turkey, through Syria, through Iraq, till he eventually arrived in the little town of Bethlehem. When he arrived, Atropine realized that he was late. But not only was he late, something terrible was happening. Something truly horrific. For Herod had decided, the king at the time, he had decided that the firstborn sons of Israel must die, there to ensure that no Messiah would ever be born. Atropine, walking around Bethlehem, seeing the massacre unfold, bumped into a young woman and her infant son. And a Roman centurion with his sword in hand was chasing her, ready to kill the baby. Atropine reached into his pocket and he pulled out a ruby, as red as the blood of the children now spilled in the streets. And he said to the centurion, "If I give you this ruby, this valuable stone, will you allow the child and his mother to live?" The centurion, not overly bothered about the politics of King Herod, took the ruby and said, "Absolutely, give me that." And off they go on their way. This little child, this baby that had been saved by Atropine, would one day be found to be a most important part of Jesus' story. For the child that Atropine saved was a man known as Joshua Barabbas. In years to come, Pontius Pilate would put Barabbas and Jesus before the people of Jerusalem and ask which one of them would be saved. Jesus, a good man, and Barabbas, a murderer. Atropine did not care who this child would become. He simply cared that the child would live. He says, does anybody know of a child born over the last few days who has strange marks and would have been visited by 3 men much like myself? And one man says, indeed, but they left only a few days before. Atropine follows the word of these people, and he leaves Israel and heads to Egypt, where he believes Joseph, Mary, and the baby Jesus has been taken. Now, we know from other books in the Bible and other books found at the time that Mary and Joseph fled to Alexandria in Egypt. And there, from Alexandria, they travelled down the Nile and crossed the Red Sea into Saudi Arabia. And if you believe, like some people do, that they continued travelling, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus ended up in what we now call the Punjab in India, where Jesus would learn a lot of the philosophies that he would later teach to his disciples and to the people. Atropine did not find Jesus in Alexandria, nor did he find him in Saudi Arabia. He did not manage to find him in India. But it was whilst travelling in the desert of Sinai, Atropine came across a Roman slave owner. He had 30-40 slaves all lashed together, all tied and shackled and ready to be sold into slavery into the Roman world. Atropine only had now a sapphire, and he said to the slave owner, if I give you this sapphire, will you sell me some of your slaves? The slave owner had no problem whatsoever. He's like, give me that stone, give it here. He took the sapphire and freed 5 or 6 of the slaves into Atropine's custody. Atropine seemed, it would appear, seemed incapable of seeing human suffering. He could not look at the sick man on the road without spending money and giving away jewels to help him get better. He could not watch a newborn baby be murdered by Romans and therefore gave another jewel away to save the child's life. And he could not see people enslaved and in bondage without spending another jewel to save them. Atropine did not want slaves. He had no business with them. They were of no use to him. And so once he had bought their freedom, he set them loose and was like, go where you wish. You are free. Your life is yours. He did, however, sit one night having a conversation with one of these slaves. And the slave had said, what are you doing? Why are you here? What brings you so far from your home? Atropine basically explains that for the last 30 years, he has travelled all across the Middle East, searching for a child, Joshua ben David, the Christ Jesus, a promised Messiah, he born under the most sacred star. The slave says, how would you recognize this man? How would you know him? How would you understand him? And Atropine basically says, you would know him at first sight, for he is blessed of heaven, born the Son of God. He has within him all the power of the spirit world. I dare say a man like he would be able to heal the sick, raise the dead, and speak great truth. One of these slaves then says, do you know, I have heard of such a man. They call him Jesus, and he now is in Jerusalem. He has been causing a great stir across all Israel. The priests in the temple do not like him. King Herod wishes him dead, and the Romans find him to be a great bother. Atropine sets out the very next day, packing his horses, taking his camels, rides across the deserts from Sinai through Jordan through what we now call Gaza, into Israel, heading for Jerusalem. But he arrives a little too late, ever late, always late, kind of like me. I'm always a few days behind where I need to be. And he arrives to see a huge crowd thronging on a hill. And there is a man carrying a cross up this mighty hill. As he pushes through the crowd and he's like, Jesus, 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 he gets hit on the head by a falling street tile, and Atropine lays on the floor, bleeding to death. And as he does, Jesus falls down beside him. This is the moment when Saint Simon of Cyrenaica will lift Jesus' cross and carry it for him. But as Jesus and Atropine lay together, Atropine says to Jesus, "My Lord, I have spent my life searching for you. And here I am. I find you at the very end of my days, and you at the end of yours." And Jesus says a very profound thing. He says, "Atropine of Armenia, I have known of you all of your life, and I have known you all of my own. And though 3 wise men brought me gifts as a babe, it is you who have given me the greatest gift." Atropine says, "All your gifts I have spent, I have given them away." And Jesus says, "I know, for I have seen and heard the good works that you have done. You, the one who did not find me, but has always sought me. You are the one person who has most lived as I would have you live." Atropine fades into death, and a few hours later, Jesus too would join him in the spirit world, dying on the cross. The moral of the story is that regardless of Jesus being the Christ, the Messiah, the Nazarene, we as spiritualists believe that he was the full embodiment of the spirit world. Through him, the full power of the spirit manifested itself. He had the power to read minds, the power of prophecy, the power of psychic reading, the power to heal, the power to communicate with spirits and angels, the power to cast out evil spirits, the power to manifest himself back from death, and the power to reach into an empty bag and bring out bread and fish and make them feed 5,000 people, though there was not enough to feed simply 12. Atropine embodied the message of the Christ, and that is what is the most important thing, because you don't have to believe necessarily in Jesus. You don't necessarily have to believe in the magic and the miracles of healing and mediumship. It might not be for you to be a medium. It might not be for you to be a healer, but it doesn't mean it's not for you to be a good person. And that is the message of the story of Atropine of Armenia. Rather than seek miracles, rather than seek to do great works, all we as spiritual beings can do is simply try to live as a good person. Do not pass on the opposite side of the road when your sister or brother needs help and attention. Do not turn your back when you see evil being done to those who are innocent and vulnerable. And if you see your brother or sister trapped and enslaved, unable to break free of their earthly tribulations, then it is for you to speak on their behalf, to give them their power, to give them their freedom, and to show them the way. That is Jesus's message. And I would just say this once more before I shut up. There is a lovely woman known as Maya Angelou. Many people will have read her poetry, the poet laureate of the United States of America. And she was asked about her Christian faith. She was asked if she thought herself to be a good Christian. And she said, "I am not a good Christian. I am a person who tries to live in a Christian way. And I only hope that when I pass into the higher world, it may be seen that I have lived as the Christ Jesus would have me live." I will just finish by saying this. Spiritualists do not believe in the Messiah. We do not necessarily believe that Jesus is the Son of God, But Jesus is the Son of God no more or less than you or I are the son and daughters of God. And it is for us to follow Jesus' message of peace, of love, of togetherness. And during this holiday season, do try, if you can, to live as Atropine of Armenia. The gifts that you give on Christmas Day are without worth. They may have financial value, but they are without worth. What is valuable over this time and in the year to come, a year that no doubt will be very difficult for very many people all over the world, is to live with kindness, to live with mercy, to live with joy, to live with love and the peace of the ever-living God. I leave you with those thoughts, and I'm sure over the next few days, many, many people will share with you their stories. I hope you can take something from mine. If you could just spare a thought for Atropine of Armenia as you go about your time, and remember that the one person who wanted to meet Jesus so much was the one person who lived most as him, then you perhaps may live a better life in the months ahead and help our world. And my final remark, I wish you, as spiritualists, a very Merry Christmas, because Christmas is not simply a festival owned by Christians. It is the festival of the unyielding sun, the festival of Sol Invictus, the sun that will not fade. It is the festival of light. It is a sign that says you have lived one more year and that the light within you will not diminish. I wish you ever to greet the rising sun. I wish you a happy 2024 Christmas time, a happy 2025 year. And I wish that you go in the peace and love of the Lord who is your God. And what you cannot ask for by the words of your mouth in prayer, I ask that God will hear in your heart. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.